probably, if you're a Facebook type, also know her as being very active in the Mediacs group. And tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do here, and your feelings about Wild Hunt before we start drinking. And then I want to hear your feelings about Wild Hunt after we start drinking.
Well, I mean, what I do for the meadery is it started kind of randomly. It was actually just a one-off. We're coming up on 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You emailed me about doing the label art for the new fall release and going over concept sketches for that. That just kind of, you started throwing additional projects at me and additional projects. And then that eventually evolved into me working for you full time. Now I refer to myself as Winim, whatever is needed in moment. So I do artwork when you have custom artwork requests, and otherwise I fill in wherever I can, wherever an extra set of hands are needed. Sometimes I'm packing boxes in the shipping room. Sometimes I'm catching cans coming off the line and stacking those. Sometimes I'm weed whacking or doing random custodial stuff. I just like to be here and help how and where I can. But I definitely, drawing is my favorite part.
Not having the goats wander around the yard.
I think that's extra awesome, and I look forward to that being more of a thing. But that, until recently, hasn't been as much of a part of the daily thing here.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm super excited for that to become more regular.
Are you ready to drink?
Sure.
So I want everyone to know who's watching this. This is Autumn's first time doing a live off the tank tasting. So this is the mead before it's been chilled, before flocculation for you nerds taking notes at home. So I love them too. I watch her do them and they're so fast. Like, it's insane. Like, I've seen photos of them and I'm like, how long is she spending? And then I'll turn around and there'll be like 3 done in the time it takes me to put the mead in the box. So this just got its spices. It's going to be chilled and canned tomorrow. But Autumn.
Yeah.
The floor is yours. I want to hear your thoughts first.
I love that familiar scent, honestly. Like, this was one of my favorite meads back when, before I worked for you, you started, it was on tap only at a festival. And I remember I kept being like, when are you going to do Wild Hunt again? When are you going to do that again? And then I actually got to be part of you doing it again and making it part of your regular seasonal rotation. And this just smells like home to me.
Yeah.
I'm definitely getting some of the spice note on it. See, and I love the blend of like warmth and tartness.
Yeah, Jake gets a major shout out this year. So 2 of our meads change every time we brew them on purpose. Everything changes a little bit because honey is a ag product, seasonal variability and all that. But Wild Hunt and Winter Warmer, we intentionally tweak every single year. Like last year, the brewers did an experiment where instead of doing a full infusion on the spices, they made a tea and poured it in. Sometimes, full disclosure, it's a logistical thing. Getting bags of spices back out of a 2,000-gallon fermenter is a total pain in the rear end. But once you pour the tea in, you get different flavors at those higher temperatures. This year, we did a combination, actually. We did teas with some things, and we fine ground because you don't have to pull powders back out. So fresh spices, fine ground. So you get a different extraction rate. And I'm really liking this balance. That tart that you were talking about can sometimes, I feel, and we'll taste one of these. It'll be, this, we each have cans of last year's batch also, so we get to compare and contrast. But yeah, I think that this balance of spice to blood orange and cranberry tart, I think we nailed it this year. That's wild. Hey, I'm Steph. She's a brewer in her own right as well. So, so recently we've been getting comments on some of our recipes where people will be like, oh, I'm trying to brew Winter Warmer and the recipe says this, but my bottle says this. And that's because we change it every year. For a while, we were a kosher facility and that had certain restrictions that came with it. And then that was too limiting for us to be able to work with small producers. So we no longer have those restrictions. We still don't pour bacon or anything into our batches. It's a logistical thing. But the ability to play around with something and know that, oh, we're a dog-friendly facility. Theoretically, we're other pet-friendly as well. We've had ferrets here. No one's tried to bring a cat in yet.
And the goats.
And the goats. And we have a bunch of baby bunnies out front. They're not pets. They just live here. So this year's Wild Hunt, we brew a couple batches every year. I think I'm going to stick with this technique. Every year we try to stick for all the batches, brew them exactly the same way, which is really tough for someone like me who wants to tweak it every single time. But yeah, I'm really liking this. And logistically, I can't pull powders back out of the tank. So that worked without having to boil things. Oh, and we don't have a boil kettle here. So they were boiling in 1 gallon pots and pouring them in over and over again up the top of a ladder. I am so glad I'm still on parental leave for that. Kyle Ducharme asks, what inspired brews with cranberry, and what are challenges around using that particular ingredient? That is a very apropos question. So as we've transitioned to using fruit seasonally, Nordic Farmhouse, we buy enough cranberry during harvest season that it lasts us the year. But our very first batch of cranberry mead, which was actually Fenberry Draft, it was only available in bottles. It's almost identical to Nordic Farmhouse in its ingredients. The biggest differences are, one, the yeast we use, the temperature at which we ferment, and we've played around with the honey to cranberry ratio for 9 years now. But we mix them together, and this is I want everyone to picture in their mind's eye, Ricky and Kelly, 9 years ago, we have decided to create a product that no one was making, called Craft Mead. And we had really no one to look to. Folks over at Bee Nectar were amazing and fielded any question I sent their way, but they were it. They were the only people in the country trying to make a product like this. And we had bummed money from family and friends to buy enough honey to make a few batches. So we got Manaz going, got Valkyrie's Choice going, we tried to get Fenberry Draft going. We mix everything in the tank, and nothing happens. When I say nothing happens, for those taking notes at home, our gravity was 1034 for 6 days in a row. Usually wild yeast will act in that amount of time. It was wild. I didn't know what was happening. Finally, I buy a pH testing kit on Amazon. It shows up, and I find out that we'd put in enough cranberry that we were essentially at the pH of lemon juice. And I go on, at the time we were using Y Yeast's dry mead strain, which is an excellent strain. We don't use it anymore. We've switched over to QA23 for Nordic Farmhouse, and we can talk about why in a minute. But it will not ferment at that pH. It is so, pH is also Doppler. So it's like an order of magnitude to sour, to ferment. So I order a bunch of potassium bicarbonate. I get it from a place that can overnight it to us. And I get into work at 8 a.m. The box shows up at noon. Between 8 a.m. and noon, Fenberry Draft had dropped 14 gravity points, and we have never opened that box of potassium bicarbonate. Eventually, the yeast said, screw it. I'm here. I might as well work. So the lag time induced by the pH of cranberry, and we later learned that it may be some of the other antioxidant components in high-quality cranberry are actually preventing some of the cellular metabolism that the yeast needs to get going. So for those of you who follow my brewer's journal, either last week or I think it was last week, I pulled the dissolved oxygen chart off of our brew monitor. and overlaid it with our fermentation. So our fermentations usually start in 2 to 4 hours because we do a good nutrient and oxygen loading. This year's Wild Hunt, I brewed it in the afternoon, went home, came back the next morning, and got a warning from Brew Monitor that nothing was happening, which is terrifying because Wild Hunt is one of our more predictable meads in-house. Between the time that I got the message at 6 a.m. and got to work at 9:32, it had dropped 4 gravity points. So there's this crazy lag. So that's one of the reasons. The reason we work with cranberry in general is actually we wanted to work with lingonberries and couldn't get them. So this year I will have, it looks like 4 lingonberries off of my lingonberry plants that I planted last year. So if we continue to expand our production at this rate per annum, we should be able to do a lingonberry mead in 21-25. So that would be pretty exciting. Oh, we got a note, but I don't know how to read it. How do I read these?
Out? I can see it.
Okay.
First surprise, and we're done with this question. People who
Don't read out loud. You're giving away the secret. So, Sam, if you're listening, way too many words. If you want us to say something, it's got to be 1 sentence. So, what we're going to say is we are doing something new this year. So, Autumn, hold up the can. Many people are familiar with Autumn's fine work. Many of you have that on garments and mugs and things like that.
Actually, I don't know that we've ever done that in print. Not the original label, I think. We've done
the original label, the components of it. Yep.
Yeah, we've done tie-in stuff, but I don't think we've ever done that.
Right. So her artwork adorns your, in some cases, person, right? Doesn't someone have an Autumn tattoo now?
Actually, I think, yeah. I think somebody actually asked if it would be okay if they got a tattoo of one of the quick sketches I did on a shipping box. And I think we've had a couple different people ask if it would be okay if they use the label from Vanir, the Yggdrasil tree. They've asked if we would be okay with them doing tattoo art of that, which I think it's so honoring and flattering. I'm like, absolutely, just, credit the company where you got it from. But
I like the idea of the little trademark underneath. One of my good friends got her favorite manga illustrator was at an event, and she got a drawing from him on her arm, and she walked across the street to a tattoo parlor and they inked his original drawing, which is pretty cool. A new service Autumn can provide if you're in the Virgins area on Thursdays. Just have her do some ink on you.
I have done tattoo designs for people before. Hilariously, I don't, in fact, actually have tattoos myself, mainly because
break that seal.
I would have to, draw my own, but also as an artist, I'm never completely satisfied with my own work. So that's why I still don't have a tattoo. It's like anytime I play with a design, I keep wanting to change it. I figure if I can put it away for a year and take it out again and not want to change it, then maybe I'll get it done. But
one of my friends who's an artist and has a bunch of her own work on her body, she was super into ink as a child, and what her parents made her do was put whatever she wanted up on the wall where she had to see it for an entire year and not sketch over it or change it. So very similar to your idea. So the reason I bring this up is Autumn agreed to do a limited edition series of prints for Wild Hunt this year. So there will be an option to get a signed print from her in your Wild Hunt case. And a little bit of each one of those sales goes directly to her as the artist. So that's
my bosses
pretty certain what that long message from Sam was supposed to. I think she said tease it or hint at it. Then we just said it. This is great. Live TV, folks. There's nothing like it.
And yeah, they would have an opportunity to get a print of an original Wild Hunt theme by me, which I'm working on. I have 2 new pieces that are not ready to be revealed yet, but I've been working on them specifically for this. And if you add the print to your order based on this live stream, it'll get discounted, and I'll sign each one individually.
That's awesome. You're so famous.
I know, it's still really weird to me to be like, oh my gosh, my art is like out there.
Yeah. So they're talking about me in this one. So what's the inspiration behind the Green Man being incorporated into this year's Wild Hunt?
So originally, when I was going over the concept designs for the first label, it involved, which I answered a lot of this in last year's blog about it, like kind of where a lot of the art came from, but we didn't really discuss the Green Man. And my original sketches with the Stag and the Hunt didn't include him. And, you know, the brewer behind the Wild Hunt formula basically was like really had his heart set on having a Green Man, and I researched it, and there's a lot of tie-ins with the Green Man and the Horned God and the whole concepts of fall and harvest and death and rebirth. And so it absolutely fits in with the theme. And you've got the transition where the Green Man is kind of, you know, spring and summer and growing things, and at the end of the year during harvest season, he falls to the Holly King, and then the Holly King kind of has precedence during the winter. And so it's like, oh yeah, that all absolutely fits with this theme. So he ended up being featured on the can. And then each year for a sticker and the mug, we've ended up highlighting just a small snapshot of the label. So the first year, you know, we had the Stag was kind of the central focal point for that year. And then last year we highlighted some of the hunting hounds, the wolves. And so this year it's like, oh, well, you know, are we going to do one of the riders? And I think it was actually Kelly who said, ooh, let's do the Green Man this year. So I focused on that Green Man, the horned Green Man figure with the leaves and the vines. And that's going to be the central medallion on the collectible mug for this year.
Yeah, I haven't even seen the concept sketches this year. I think only Kelly's seen them. So Autumn, crack that can.
Twist my arm. Ouch. Okay, you convinced me.
I like your dogs thinking they were going to get some of it. I heard the excitement.
Oh, it's eternal. My mighty defenders. I never worry about being snuck up.
So I remember tasting this off the machine last year, like as the cans were coming through, and being worried that the cinnamon and nutmeg was just going to explode out of the can and it was going to be too much for people. But Jake reminded me, as he does every year, it mellows in the can. It mellows in the can. And this, I'm getting just like a big nose of blood orange.
I was about to say the citrus is much more prominent.
Yeah, and it's the same ratio. I can share some of the tasting notes. I took them and wrote them down like I'm supposed to. I don't know if other people in their roles, either in this company or in the larger world, constantly feel like a 6-year-old being really proud that she actually completed her spelling assignment. But you're like, that's all you were told to do. Like, I'm glad you feel proud about this, but this is base level. And when someone writes to me and says, hey, did you do the tasting notes? And I said, yes. And they are in the document where they're supposed to be. I feel like a hero. Like, it's like I should get special accolades. So our tasting notes from this year. Now, remember, we're tasting off the tank. It is not chilled or carbonated yet. So for those who like the inside baseball on this, we do continuous tastings throughout the fermentation process of any of our seasonals. Valkyrie's Choice, we take our gravity readings, it's good to go. But something that we haven't brewed in a year or is shifting a little bit, like Wild Hunt, Winter Warmer, Buckland, we taste every single day just to see, because we can always tweak it a little bit. We can put in a little more lemon. Hard to pull lemon back out. So we try to have a gentle hand. But our tasting notes for this year's Wild Hunt are, it's got a ruby red grapefruit color, as you all saw. The aroma has that cinnamon and clove first, which Jake and I are both a little worried about because we put way less clove, but because we ground it, we thought we'd get way better extraction, which is always exciting, and we did. And then you just get sort of like a general citrus. And then tons of blood orange on the palate. Like that's the first thing I get. And then as Autumn was saying, that warm spice at the end. And the closest comparison, because we always like to give a comparison, is it tastes a lot like Wild Hunt. Autumn, you did not successfully turn off your notifications.
I'm not hearing anything from my end.
Huh. Then I know what it is. I'm on a computer that my wife left her Slack running on. Hooray.
I was going to say, I haven't gotten anything.
You did it. I misjudged. I was wrong. Hopefully Kelly is listening to this and has learned some sort of lesson. Or more accurately, hopefully I'm listening to what I just said and I've learned a lesson to go and look at her browser and close Slack. So those are our official tasting notes, but new tasting notes will come next week when it is all canned up, carved, and come back to room temperature. So when you get tasting notes at home, they are done after packaging, and then we let it sit out on the floor, and then either we'll chill it again or drink it at room temperature so we can be accurate to what you're actually getting at home.
I think you should the differences in temperature, how the flavor profile will shift with the more complex brews, depending on whether it's room temperature or chilled. I have a great time talking with people about that at the farmer's market. And they're like, oh, should I drink, should it be chilled? Should I drink it warm? And it's like, it's so subjective. Like you've got to find what works for you.
Thank you, Bo. Bo has been waiting all year for this. Make sure to grab a whole bunch then. Then it's gone for another year.
I look forward to a year too.
Yeah. I will say of all of our meads, the two that we have people most excited for the return of are definitely Buckland and Wild Hunt. A lot of people love Winter Warmer, but I think there's something about, so we're super into seasonality here at the company. Like in the company, not the products we make, but we have like different foods that we eat as our like company lunches throughout the year. And it really runs in, I mean, people spend thousands of dollars to get on buses and drive around and look at our fall, right? Like that's where we live. And so it's really easy to live with that rhythm if we let ourselves. Also in the back, we only heat with the metabolism of the yeast. I don't know if everyone knows that, but all of the heat for the part of the building that we occupy comes from the heat extraction from the metabolic activity of the yeast in our fermentations. So those first couple days where it's 48 degrees in the room you're standing in really helps you settle into fall and winter. And I think there is something about having a couple things, and I'm really excited now that Psychopomp is going to be coming back soon because I believe this week the Michigan cherry harvest started. So, Sam, do you have other questions for us, or should we just? Whoa! How'd that happen?
Magic.
Yeah. Talk about the mug. My God, I saw this design come across our company's Slack, and it's just gorgeous.
So actually, fun thing about the mug too is that we're using a different. Do you mind if I jump in, Ricky?
Oh, please! This is all you. You know all about the mug.
For the sales, in the past, what we've done is we've ordered mugs, and with a certain number, and then at a certain point, that runs out. And so if you weren't quick enough to order one, or you weren't set up to order one, you might have missed out on it. So we're trying it differently this year because we want to make sure that anybody who wants one has an opportunity to order one. So the mug is going to go out for pre-sale. They're handmade. They feature the Green Man medallion that it showed on the little sample photo there. And they'll be expected to ship. Thank you for putting that back up, Sam. They're expected to ship in late November. So if you're going to order a mug, you want to place your order by Friday, August 26th. And we're taking orders until then. So then we'll order the number of mugs based on the number of people who want them. So then we don't have extras sitting around, or we don't oversell and not have enough for people who want them, we're going to just pre-order them all, have them made to order. We do usually get a couple of extras just to compensate for breakage during shipping or, as a safety net. But in general, we're going to try this model so that people don't feel that they missed out if they didn't get a chance to order.
I don't have any of our mugs. Kelly has them. We have like 4 or 5 at the house. But that is the first one that I am going to submit an order for. I love that drawing so much. So we got a question of why is it, can you make the mug? Oh, I could just hide and like look like I'm peeking out of the top. You could have been in the handle if you wanted. So why the Green Man, even though it's not spring? So the Green Man is an icon that occurs throughout Celtic, Scandinavian, many North American native traditions. It shows up in different guises.
That's
All an archetypical image. Geladu is actually my favorite, who is a form of the Green Man that protects trees and children. And it's tall and barefoot and hangs out in the woods. So it might be me.
I was going to say, it sounds like you, Ricky.
my friend actually thought I might be, because I also only deign to wear a shirt at the meadery. Otherwise, wind or snow or rain only toughens my hide.
And often you're barefoot.
As often as I'm allowed to be. So even though it's not spring. So the Green Man, I think, Autumn, as you envision him, is here until he's not. Because up here, I mean, it's green and growing things out here, and it will be until October 15th. And there's a strength to the way you've always drawn him that just looks like the, well, you said the Holly Man, but like that Green Man that you draw looks like he could be totally covered with snow and just grinning away.
Yeah, I personally see him as, again, like most cultures, he's a cyclical, seasonal archetype. And you'll notice that on the Wild Hunt label, he's not fully green. I've got the leaves on the tips of his vines, and some of the leaves on his face are starting to show that fall color, that orange and red, as the green, the time of greenness is coming to a close and winter hasn't yet arisen. We're not, upon us. And again, the cycle, you've got generally the Green Man is kind of prominent for half of the year. And then he falls and is dormant while the Holly King takes over for that half of the year. And then, some say it's the equinoxes are the beginning and end points. Others say it's the solstices, but across the board, it's kind of agreed that the Horned God or the Green Man or Jack in the Green, all of these different archetypes that are all kind of interconnected has precedence for half of the year, the living growing season. Mm-hmm. And then during the other half of the year, the Holly King is in power and they just alternate. It's that yin yang, that cyclical balance, the light and the dark. It's all a never ending circle. And it all ties into that, the hunt, the harvest. You've got, animals give birth, you've got the crops flourish, and then there's the time of harvest, and then there's the time of hunkering down and resting and, kind of getting through the long night until the light returns. So the Green Man, I have him featured here, the fall, the harvest, the hunting season. He's still here. He's not gone yet, but he is starting to age. He's at the end of his turn on the cycle. So, but it's not winter yet. So he's still,
as Autumn personified, you are the person who's allowed to talk about this. Why the Wild Hunt at all? Oh, that's okay. So Nate originally came up with the blood orange idea, and then we worked on the spice profile together. This is so long ago, I can barely remember, but we actually, the original batch, we had winter warmer that was in kegs and hadn't been packaged. So we literally just poured winter warmer into Nordic Farmhouse plus blood orange. Like that was how this came to be. And that's why every year we iterate, because, we're not going to be dumping kegs of winter warmer anymore. 2020 was a weird time. We expected to have all these events. So we had all these kegs of Winter Warmer and then COVID. So
actually, wasn't that 2019? Because then 2020 is when you first canned it.
well, we always save Winter Warmer for a year.
Oh,
But
right.
we used to only save it in kegs because saving in package was a total nuisance. And we also had switched facilities that year. So we
Right.
only had kegs of it waiting for winter events so we could do our normal side-by-sides. Spoiler, no one on this call knows about it, but I have some of that Winter Warmer saved in bottles to be sold this year. I just found them and I'm going to be labeling them in 2 weeks. Anyway, so why the Wild Hunt? The idea for the name, I think, is tough. That seemed like Jake, Ricky, and Nate all had the idea. Like it wasn't one person's idea. It was just the three of us sitting around drinking, talking about what we wanted this mead to taste like. And the name just sort of appeared. But I don't know. I was probably, I don't know, someone was probably just reading something or listening to Ghost Riders in the Sky. I don't know. Yeah. But why the Wild Hunt? I think it goes to Autumn's. This feels like fall. Now, the Wild Hunt does occur at different times in different cultures. In Scandinavian culture, I believe it's often dead winter. When they're coming and you can see them through the blackness coming to get you, whereas the classic Ghost Riders in the Sky happens in the heat of summer as a thunderstorm is driving them forward potentially. But I personally, in my studies, usually came across the Wild Hunt occurring at the time of harvest, as the winter was coming on and death was getting near.
Well, and what I love too is that, again, it's one of those just cross-cultural archetypes that ties in with, this primeval cycle that all humans on some level are connected to. And you'll notice that there's so many different cultures that all have maybe not exactly the same concept, but similar stories. And it ties into that, that inevitability of, the power of a storm and the inevitability of growing old and dying, and the inevitability of the crops, turning brown and withering as winter sets in, just as it's all followed by new life, that it's such a deep in your bones, primeval connection to primitive life that, and for me, that really speaks to me. I'm also, a homesteader. I'm very into ethical subsistence hunting, and that close connection to natural rhythms is just, it speaks to me immensely.
I think that's something that you don't last long in our company if that's not the way you live. We literally shift our production and packing schedule in the winter so that people can hunker down. It's not just the logistics of getting here in the snow. When it's been dark, I lived in Denmark for a while, and I was trying to speak the language as much as I could, which is exhausting on top of like school. But the sun was waking up at 10:30 and she was going to bed at 3. And so if I was in class in the middle of the time, and it was also Denmark, so it's cloudy all the time in the winter because it's where the jet stream ends and then it condenses out. But I was sleeping like 14 hours a day. But then summer comes and, perfectly happy sleeping 6. The sun is giving you that message that it's time to get up. It's time to plant. It's time to weed your garden. It's time to be out amongst your flock. But I don't know how people who watch the same shows, listen to the same music, and eat the same food and drive in the same air-conditioned or heated vehicles. It's just so far from the way we live. Like the only way we could heat our house for the first 208 years was with a fire. It was only last year that we finally had another way that we could heat the house. And also cooling it down involved going into the basement. There's this natural rhythm to the way we do things here in the company. Sam's in Florida, but they have something like rhythms. It's just very small compared to our very extreme ones. Ooh.
Fully answered that question, but teasers about what the print is going to look like. Okay, so I don't want to do something that's just a duplicate of something that's been done before, but I have harkened back to, I didn't just redraw the original label, but I definitely came back to the elements of the original label where you've got some of the same characters. And I tried a couple different iterations. It was fighting with me a little bit. I was just talking with Kelly about this earlier. The muse can be fickle at times. There are some days where I'll come up with something incredibly complex in an hour and pull it off. And then there's other times where I'll spend weeks fighting with a simple line drawing of a tree. It's just, you never know. So I was working on wanting to come up with something special for this print that is going to be tied in with the release. And it was fighting with me for a couple days until I decided to go back to my roots. I actually, it's going to have a darker background, much like I was drawing on white paper initially. And I decided to go back to this kind of grayscale for this, misty, dark forest vibe. So it's got, I actually cheated a little bit in that I used dark paper to start with.
How is that cheating? Sorry, can you explain in any way how that is cheating?
I decided to simplify the visual elements. Conscientiously simplified by starting off on a darker paper. I used a charcoal background, and then instead of drawing darker line art, I'm drawing the lighter line art with darker shadows. So you get that kind of the same vibe as this first label, which really speaks to me, which is a spectral hunt through a dark forest on a moonlit night, and winter is coming. It's not here yet, but that nip in the air and trees starting to get bare and, colors changing and just that sense of intensity and darkness and urgency. I decided to try to recapture some of that. And I started with a darker backdrop, and now I'm just doing more with the highlights and shadows with a couple of accents of color here and there, but I'm much happier with it now. So I'm excited to reveal it. I'll be bringing that in on Monday, actually, so it can go to the printers. So it's not going to look exactly like the label, but I've harkened back to the label for my inspiration. It'll feature the stag for sure, because he's kind of taken on a life of his own, which I think is one of the things I love most about this. When I originally did the first label 2 years ago, the stag was just a vehicle for highlighting the ingredients of the brew. Initially, it's like, okay, wild hunt, darkness, hunting, blood, sacrifice, that whole concept. But it's like, okay, family friendly. I don't want to have actual, blood and bodies. And then I came up with the idea after seeing a image of a stag who'd been thrashing his antlers around in some brush to, challenge a rival. And he had this magnificent red stag that a wildlife photographer had captured with just brush and bracken hanging off of his antlers. And it made it look like the antlers themselves were growing. And I went, ooh, there's an idea. So then I was like, oh, blood orange is part of the elements. So that's why I've got the orange with the arrow piercing it. And that's kind of the figurative, metaphorical bloodletting of a hunt. But there's no actual blood. It's safe. It's PG. It's an orange dripping juice. It's not quite as visceral as a more true to life illustration.
And also, I was going to say true to life, there is actual blood orange dripping into this mead, but not actual stag blood. So
yes.
There you go.
But yeah, it definitely feature the stag because he just started off as a way to illustrate ingredients. He's splashing through a cranberry bog to escape his pursuers. He's got blood oranges in his antlers. And he took on a whole life of his own, which
I'm just staring at your original label now and seeing all of these secret elements that I somehow never noticed before. And I have looked at this can a lot, like more than any of our other cans. So I was going to say, if there are any other questions coming in, what's a good food/meal to pair with Wild Hunt? I will take this one. It's anything you enjoy eating. Which is not, that's my normal cop-out answer. We actually use it here as part of our Harvest Festival. So we've had a Harvest Festival every single year except 2020. We didn't have one, but we now collaborate with the town of St. Albans itself to do all the drinks for their Harvest Fest. So if you are a carnivore, your heavy slaughtered meats, so pork belly, we used to do a lot of bratwurst. We actually did a spiced bratwurst that had the same spices as the Wild Hunt. So that's really good. If you're not a carnivore, we do a lot of harvest grains. So perfect for Thanksgiving dinner. Agree entirely. We actually, I'm trying to remember how much. I think we went through 6 gallons at a not huge Thanksgiving party that we threw. It's ideal. It's all the courses of the meal in one, as long as you're eating turkey alongside. So
incredible ice cream float.
Mm-hmm. So any questions before Autumn and I go? Oh, clone recipe posted in the comments. Okay, so often fruits go in secondary because you don't want that yeast scrubbing to strip away too much of the strawberry flavor or blueberry flavor. Blood orange and cranberry are both super robust fruits. A little bit of scrubbing actually takes off the harsh edge. So it all goes in day one when we brew. Same as with tart cherries for us. You get the fruits in there, and then in secondary, I like to put my spices in with about 6 to 10 gravity points to go. So we finish out at 994 on a hydrometer. And so at 10 or 1002, we'll get all of our spices in there just for a very small amount of yeast activity on them. But if you miss those marks, it's no big deal. You won't taste the difference in a homebrew batch, but you'll think that you can taste the difference. And that's the fun of being a home brewer. So with that, we should let everyone go about their day. So the mead is available. I have been told. I don't do the website design things, so I might be lying to you. The merch is available. And I think there are links if you're watching this. If you are watching it 6 months from now, I'm sorry you missed Wild Hunt again this year. Autumn, do you have any final words for our beloved Mediacs?
Honestly, just thank you guys so much for all the love. And I love the community and the mythos that's sprung, not just the mythos of the Wild Hunt that we drew from, but the mythos that's sprung up around the Stag and this brew has become really fun to follow. And the support and the accolades go a long way. It kind of helps me offset my old college professor who said, you need to stop drawing animals so much. It's not professional. And now I say, ha!
The last piece of art, and the first piece and last piece I actually purchased for my house was a piece by Autumn, and I almost got an owl from her, and then she gave me an owl as a gift, so I'm glad I didn't buy that.
The piece was the Headless Horseman.
Headless Horseman! I was trying to decide between the two.
Yeah,
my daughter is obsessed. Yep. But her animal works are so beautiful. And then for Christmas, she gave me another version of the owl that I had almost purchased. So don't give up on animals. And I was about to say all these things. Brewer's apron. I can get a brewer's apron? Okay. So if you want that signed print, you got to order today. You got to order your mugs by, I think Autumn said next Friday?
To order mugs before next Friday. And then if you order today, you will get the print signed by me.
Oh my gosh. And Steph, you're wonderful. And I can say it. And Steph agreed to be on this show with us in a couple weeks to talk moral philosophy and brewing mead. It's the first time we've known who the guest was coming up.
Excellent.
So look forward to that. It was wonderful.
If you want to join the community too, there is that, the Certified Mediacs group is an amazing community on Facebook. It's one of those few places on Facebook that actually is really just wholesome. And there's still a group that every Friday, sometimes there's 3 people, sometimes there's 10 people. I try to drop in once in a while, they do a virtual mead hall every Friday. And it's just fun. It's an opportunity. It's over Zoom for people to hang out, have a drink, and just connect with other people, which part of that, the community element, I think, is the best thing about Groennfell and the way it's developed a sense of just wholesomeness, the join the feast, the sense of being safe and feasting together, and that sense of community and home is, I think, one of the things I love best about being here. And I'll always be really into the Wild Hunt because this is what started it all for me.
Thank you so much, Autumn. You and I get to go mop together now, which is part of being in community at home.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you.